I've got my batting here. It is 22 by 22. Supposedly the same size as the topper, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to go ahead and put my topper on it and get it flattened out, smoothed out. And anywhere that I have a good amount of batting sticking out from behind it, I want to go ahead and trim that away. You can kind of just scrape it with your fingers until you're happy with it. And now I'm going to take my ruler and just trim away any little excess. And I am going to match up the seam line here on the inside seam line of the border to make sure I have a straight cut. So I have removed all of the excess batting that might have been sticking out around all four sides, and that way it's not going to be wadded up in the binding at all. Let me close this real quick. And I'm taking a page out of my friend Katie's book, and I'm going to do the backing and the binding in black. Hers came out just so nice. And I have cut my backing to 26 square. I need to find half here. Like that. And I'm gonna lay it on half. Just check out the two sides and make sure those are about even. There. That's easier. Why fight it, right? There we go. Okay, that looks really good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some paper tape, and I'm going to tape down the edge of the topper and the batting to the backing, and that is to prevent the foot from getting caught up underneath. I'm going to place my tape within 1/4 inch of the edge, so that if you cannot get the tape off when you're finished, any little bits that are left will be caught up inside the seam allowance of the binding and you won't see it. OESD also makes a tape that is wash away, and I will link to that below the video, and that way if you want to use that, you can. This is 3M paper tape. You can get a dozen rolls of it for really inexpensively on Amazon. I'll link to that too. I have this in my Amazon store. All of the products that I buy on Amazon, I have them in my Amazon store. You can take a look at them. I've got sewing things, embroidery things, computer things, and if possible, I put different things at different price points in there so that it can fit everybody's budget. That looks good. So we are ready to go. I have a Designs and Machine Embroidery magnetic hoop. If you are doing these and you're going to do these with me the whole time, I would highly recommend that you invest in these. They make them for, I think, pretty much all home embroidery machines. I'll link to them below, and that's an affiliate link for me, so if you want to get one, I'd appreciate it if you use my link. And what that does is allows you to do some minute maneuvering, okay? But as far as I know, they make them for pretty much all home embroidery machines, and there is a chart that you can look at to see which one will fit with your machine. But these are the best things, you guys, since sliced bread and weed eaters. Y'all remember using those trimmers when we were kids like this along the sidewalk? Man, I do. I'm going to blame my arthritis on that. Okay, so the way you use this hoop, is the reason I've got extra here. Let me go. Yeah, you can see that. The reason I've got extra here and here is because I want to do this, and this is going to be held in the hoop. Just like that. So, this is the 10 by 16 for the Brother Luminaire or the Baby Lock Solaris. It has a little kind of a cutout notch on the corner, and that allows you to easily pick it up. So I am I'm placing this as straight. Let me put it on here as straight as I can. Make sure I'm kind of lining up my hoop edge of my hoop with some lines on my mat. And then I'm just going to pop this on. Let's see, where is, it's up there. Okay. Woo, did you hear that? Snap. That's why it's called the Monster Snap Hoop. We are hooped. Look at that. I'm ready to go to the embroidery machine. Yeah. If you're ever doing the Designs by Juju, if you're going to do yours with like the Designs by Juju Loopy Hearts, which is an adorable design that would look great on this, this hoop allows you to do some very, let's say, okay, here's 0 on center, and it's going to jump over here to start, and you're on your second pass. It ended over here or whatever, and it's going to jump to start. If your needle, if you hit the +1 and your needle jumps to that start point and it's not right where it needs to be, you can actually, because it's not, you know, captured within the sides of the hoop, you can tug these. See that? I can tug it just a hair and get it so it will be exactly what you want. These hoops are absolutely, I would call them essential for doing machine embroidery, quilting to finish your quilt projects. Absolutely, I couldn't imagine. I would never even, I wouldn't do it if I didn't have a magnetic hoop. And look how much landscape I'm covering. If you've got the Solaris or the Luminaire, look at how much landscape I'm gonna cover. It's just, it's incredible. Okay, I'm just gonna stipple this. I need to get this video done and get it out, so I'm gonna stipple it and we're gonna go to the machine. All right, we are here at the Luminaire, and I'm gonna put this ginormous hoop into the machine. Okay, and now I want to go ahead and I want the machine to take a picture and see what we've got, and then we're gonna fill it up with some stippling. So I'm gonna go to my design center. The first thing I need to do is to take a picture of what it's going to be stitching on. And you do that by hitting this little leaf looking button right up here. Like it's going to take a picture of the leaf, and I'm going to touch image scan and tell it scan. It says the frame will move to be scanned with the built-in camera. It has a picture of the scanning mat, but the machine doesn't care. It just needs to scan whatever is on the bed of the machine. It doesn't care that it's not a scanning mat. Now, I do not recommend going as large as possible, but you do want to go large enough to be able to capture the top edge of this up here. All right, so we can see on the screen, we've got the leaf light and the leaf dark. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker so you can see better. We can see the top of the design and the edge of the design, and that's good because we want the stitching to go just off the top and side of the design. I've got these hair clips. These are handy. They are just for this. They work really well. They need to make some just for this, so I don't have to raid the hair clip drawer. There, that way that'll keep that out of the way. What we want to do now is we want to tell the Luminaire where exactly we want to stitch, and we do that by assigning a shape. And this button over here, it's got a circle and a square. That's the shapes button. I'm going to hit that, and to do that, let's see, I'm just going to choose the square shape and tell it okay. And you can see the square on the screen. I'm going to go to size now. Your size and your rotate should both be highlighted. I'm going to touch size because I want to make it bigger. I'm going to touch the square that has arrows going outward on all 4 sides, and I'm going to hold it until it gets pretty big. I want to hold it just till it gets where it's touching the edge, like right there, and I'm gonna, I don't recommend, I'm gonna stretch it now taller. I don't recommend going as big as possible. So like this is a 10 by 9 or 11 by 9 and a half. it up. This is not an exact science, guys. So where I have this now is just over the edge of the fabric into the tape on both edges right there. And that's good. That's 12.12 by 9.27, and I like that. I'm going to tell it okay. Now I have to tell it what to stitch. And to do that, up here, these 5, the line with the zigzag and those 4 buttons under it are line editing. And this with the red box with the little stitches, the series of stitches, those are for fill. And then the eraser and the shapes are outside of that little gray box. And so those apply to both as well as these. So I need to tell it I want to put a stipple in there. So I'm going to touch the stitches. And then here, this second one is the stipple. And I'm going to tell it okay. Let me just tell you my thoughts on how, so we could go to this button here and I could choose all kind of different designs. My problem with these designs in here is that if you look, they have open edges, all right? If you go to put them in, like this one has hearts and it's very pretty, but when I resize it to put it where I want, it's going to leave open lines that on the next pass you need to match up with the next pass. Otherwise your lines don't work and it's a mess and it'll drive you absolutely crazy. That's been my experience. If any of you know how to do that, I guess you could put it all by itself and then they would be next to one another, but they wouldn't nest. I don't know. I'm just like this one here, you can see plainly leaves open ends all over the place. You would have a hot mess if you tried to take these. I tried it earlier with, I think, this one with the flowers, and it just left open ends everywhere, and it just doesn't work. So I'm just going to go here, and when I go to the stipple will give you a fully enclosed design so that they will nest and they look like they go together. It's, I don't know why, anyway, okay. So I'm just going to tell it okay. And now I need to tell it what to do with the stipple. And the paint bucket right here, I'm going to touch the paint bucket and I'm going to pour the stipple into the square that we made, into the rectangle, by just touching the screen. And there it is. And you can kind of see the stippling in the background. I think you can. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. Now I need to tell it where not to stitch. The Luminaire and the Solaris both come with a capacitive pen. You don't have to have the battery in it. You only need the battery in it if you're going to use this end down here for sewing or the little light. This end works regardless of whether you have a battery in it or not. This one is good. It's a little fat for me. I prefer this one here. It's from Mixu and it's got a bunch of different bits and pieces. You can use this to write if you have a tablet or something, but this one's a little bit smaller and I just like this one better. I have better control. Again, this is in my Amazon store. And I'm going to touch the eraser and I'm going to erase. Oh, actually I'm going to make my eraser a little bit bigger. I'm going to touch that's big enough right there. I've got it at like a 33. I'm going to tell it okay. I'm going to go up to was 200 too big? No, 200's fine. I'm going to drag this down just a little bit so I can see it. Okay. Now I am going to, the eraser button is highlighted and I'm going to just touch and I'm going to go around all the outsides like you do a puzzle. I'm going to do the edges first. And I've got just a hair going around the outside edges of where I think, see, it didn't get captured in that image scan. There. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make it really light. I'm going to make the background very, very light. And now I can see exactly what I need to get rid of in there. And I'm just going to erase it all. This is a real good way to make sure you don't have any little extra anything in there, because it will create a stitch for it. It'll jump in there and create a stitch and you'll be like, what's going on? There. So now I have erased everything I don't want stitched, and that's perfect. I'm going to tell it next. These 3 buttons right here, I'm going to tell it on the second one where it says 0.0200. That's a very tight stipple. Okay, I want it much wider. And notice what has happened. The machine creates 2 stitches for the stippling. It creates the stippling itself, and then it has this large outer border stitch, and we need to get rid of that. You don't have to. You can just not stitch it in the machine when it's doing its thing, and that's the easy way, or you can get rid of it. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of it if you want to. So I'm going to touch the 0.200, and I'm going to make it bigger all the way up to, oh, my bad, all the way up to 6. 0.600, and I'm going to touch OK. There. That's the size stipple I am looking for, right there. That's nice and loosey-goosey. It's pretty. It'll work. And look, the stipple is fully enclosed. There are no lines going outside that you would have to match. It is a fully enclosed design, and it did that. It digitized it like that on purpose, and that's perfect. Okay, now to get rid of the black line that you can see, you want to touch memory, and I'm going to put it in the machine. Now you want to hit return. Can you see those buttons? No, I'm too close. Let me get wider. Okay, the memory is down here at the bottom. Once you get it in memory, then you're going to hit return. And now up here, it's really hard to see, but it is the black line. There is a black line that's going around your box. So now you want to touch the pocket for memory. And there's the design you just saved in memory. Go ahead and touch that and bring that up. You can't see the black line at all, but it's there. So now touch this one up here at the top with the black line and the zigzag. Touch that. And now you want to go to line property. We're going to go to single stitch right there. And you want to go to no stitch. And that's the zigzag with the red line through it. No stitch. And tell it okay. That means you're fixing to tell it what not to stitch. And now you can see that black line again. And all you need to do is you need to hit the paint bucket, because you're going to fill that black line with your no stitch that you just programmed in. And I'm just going to touch that black line. And it should turn into little bitty dots. And I don't think my camera can zoom in close enough for you to be able to see that, but you have to trust me. It just did it. So that looks good. I'm going to tell it next. So now look, it redigitized with no black line, and it kept that 0.600 stippling. Looks great. Let me go darker. And I can see now it's not going to stitch on my applique at all, and I'm ready to go. I'm going to hit set, and it says now it's going to convert to an embroidery pattern. Once you click OK, you are now out, you're getting out of Design Center and into the embroidery module of the Luminaire. I'm going to tell it OK. And we don't need to do any editing at all. It jumps us into the edit mode, and we're going to go to embroidery. And it just moved to where it's going to start, and it gives me the layout of the stipple it's going to do, and there is no second stitch of that heavy black line. If you don't want to get rid of the heavy black line, you can just jump right, you can skip all that part we did to get rid of it. You can just jump into embroidery, and on the second stitch it has, just don't stitch it. Just go back to home and start all over when you're going to do your next pass. So we're ready to go ahead and stitch this. I've got a 7511 organ needle in here. I've got white thread in it, and I have a 90 weight pre-wound bobbin in the bobbin case. I'm stitching with Dime's Exquisite thread. Something's wrong. You have to thread your needle. When you do this, it's amazing how that helps. I'm gonna put the foot down and lift it up. Y'all, I got so wrapped up. I was watching that thread move around. I'm like, why is that jumping? Oh gosh. All right, if that happens, let me show you what to do. It says check and rethread the upper thread. Okay, I'm gonna click OK. Let me show you what to do. Down here, there is a needle plus minus button. I'm gonna touch that. You can jump ahead 110, 100, or 1,000 stitches, or you can go back 110, 100, or 1,000. And this is where you can jump ahead if you've got thread color changes, but there's a 0 right there. And if I touch that, it's gonna go back to start. Now, you wanna thread your needle. Hey, we all do it, we all do it. Some of us do it more than others, but we all do it. So now I'm just gonna hit the go button. And this is gonna take 3 minutes. Oh, you guys, this turned out so good. Take a look. Isn't that precious? I just think this is awesome. I love doing this. It is so much fun, and it comes out so good the first time, every time. So let's go over to the cutting mat, and I'm going to show you how I prep the next pass, and that way the machine can see what it is you want it to do. Okay, for the next pass, so I don't have to unroll this right here. I'm going to leave this in. I'm going to lift up the edge. Well, before I do that, I'm going to take my tape. And I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'm going to tape just barely over the bottom of the stitching, just a tiny bit. And that is going to be seen by the camera, and that's going to tell the machine, that's going to show you so that you can see that stitching where to end the next time you set up your square. So I'm just putting it barely on the end. I mean, like right on top of that edge of stitching right there, not over it at all, but right on top of it. And that way I can snug up as close as I want to that. So this is my boundary for where my stitching has already happened. And then I'm just gonna lift this up. And I'm gonna slide so that the metal is underneath the other piece. Okay. Kind of feel for the edge. Whoa. There's a trick to this, y'all. Put your fingers here, feel for the edge. All right, that's good. Now I can get this whole piece on the next pass. I think that'll work fine. Now see, look, if it's not tight, you can tug. See this? How about that? I love it. Love, love. You guys, these are not cheap. They are worth every penny. Absolutely worth it. Best investment for your home projects. That's how easy that was to rehoop. Just slid it down and rehooped it. We are ready to go back over to the Luminaire and do this again. Okay, we're all finished. I'm so excited to have this done. Oh my gosh, you guys. It turned out just adorable. And a lot of what I had considered to be puckering or ripples, bubbles in where the seams were and stuff, that's gone. The embroidery took it out. A lot like if you get a wavy quilt on a long arm The long arming process will take it out. Okay, I need to take my tape off. Oh, it is so easy to do this. Gosh, I love it. All right, so I'm going to use a self-binding, and I am going to trim the edges down to 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to fold and fold and fold. See, this is what I was talking about. You want to make sure that your tape is, when you go to pick it out, that it is going to be within the seam allowance, because it can be, all right, that looks good. Okay, so again, I'm going to trim to 1.5 inches on the outside edge. So I'm gonna square this quilt top as much as possible. And by that I mean I am going to get myself a 90-degree angle here, as close as possible, to square this up. Sometimes the edge of your quilt is a little wavy. Use this, your border seam, as a guide. I want to get this all the same, all the way across. I'm just going to eyeball it, but I'm going to fold it like a 1/4 inch or so, maybe 3/8. Just so it's the same on all 4 sides. It does not matter. You can do it smaller. I did 1.5 inches. You can do 1.25 inches. I just feel like 1.5 inches gives you a little bit more wiggle room on those corners when you're trying to do the miter. So that's the only thing, because that is not an exact science. And see how this is kind of feeling like it wants to ripple? I am going to hit the steam button. Just a little bit. I need it to behave. Okay. If you need to use a seam gauge to double check and make sure. So like now I'm 1 inch and, let's see, I'm 1 1/8 inches away from the red fabric all the way down. That's just eyeballing right there, 1 1/8 inches. Okay. And now I'm going to use Steam a Seam 2, and I'm just going to put it on the edge of the fabric. Then you get to play games with it and get it to turn loose of itself. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to fold up to the edge. Fold over again, fold it up onto the quilt top. Very nice. That looks good. If you want to, when you're done, you can take a blanket stitch and run it in the ditch right here. Like I would use black thread and stitch in the ditch and grab it with the blanket stitch. But there's one side. I'll do the other. Do opposite sides, and that will prevent you from getting like wonky rounded corners. My iron is the Sapporo gravity fed iron. I really like it. It has a solenoid out here on the side, and it never has water inside of the iron, so it never spits. This is usually used by garment seamstresses, professional garment seamstresses. I've had this iron for 6 years. I absolutely love it. It's the best $100 I ever spent. And I don't use the minerals in it. I use distilled water. Now that I know where the crease is, I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to trim away this little bit right there. And that's actually, it's a fold, 3 layers. Get rid of that. There. So now I only have 1 layer of fabric folding up in this corner instead of 4. And that makes a big difference on your bulk and the quality of your miter. If you don't have a big old wad of fabric in there, it's going to turn out much nicer. I'm giving it the initial fold up right now. I'm not doing anything with the glue, but this way it knows what I want it to do. You know, fabric gets a mind of its own. You have to take control. All right, so it knows what I want it to do. And now I'm going to, now that it has that fold in there, now I'm going to take this corner and make that 45 right here. Okay. This is why you want this thing as square as possible. Your backing, you want it as square as possible when you start. I want that. That's my little glue for my fold on my miter. There. Okay. So I'm going to fold this over and get myself a nice point right here. Okay. Same to the other side. Over that miter right there. Okay. And now when I go to fold this up, it's easier to create that point. And you want to figure this out before you glue it. Yeah. Oh, wow, that looks amazing. Glue down these little points a little bit better. That looks good. Okay, you guys, it's all done. I am so happy with how this turned out. I think it is just adorable. I did go ahead and do a blanket stitch right here on the bottom. And I stitched in the ditch. It's hard to see because it's in black, but very, very happy with it. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it too. And I am looking forward to doing marches. Join me January 27th, 2022 at 3:30 Central, and I am going to do this one for Mardi Gras. I am using October's Cutie Table Topper pattern, and I just wanted to give you an idea of what it's going to look like. I'll be taking the borders off in order to do all of the applique, but this is how you can mix and match your toppers with different fabrics. It'll be a YouTube live with all brands. Go sew something. Bye.